Francis Ngannou is pissed. He's just straight up angry after being on the sidelines for, several months at this point. Sounds like he's not getting his chance at Stipe this year like he hoped to. Tweeted out that he has fought for 20 seconds in the past 16 months, which is true. Last time he fought was 20 seconds. Done. So he's mad about this inactivity, frustrated he's not getting a title shot. Matt, what do we make of this?
I mean, how can you not sympathize with him, right? This is a guy that has wanted his crack at Stipe again for, 2 years now? And it seems like he's going to have to wait even longer. Listen, it's kind of his fault that he's only fought for 20 seconds. If he wasn't so devastating, he could have put 15 minutes in the cage, right? Just don't knock everybody out the first chance you get. So that's your fault. It's your fault, Francis. But if you go back, his last fight was only 1 minute and 11 seconds as well against Junior. So he has had very little time inside the octagon. And I get that if you look at it from the outside perspective of like, oh, he's getting paid very well for the amount of work he puts in. But again, it's just not the work in the cage that we see. It's all of the training, all the time away from home, all of the sweat, blood, sweat, and tears in the gym. All of that is a part of the pay, right? So it's kind of like he feels a little bit, I don't know what the best word to say is here, but it's like he's putting in a lot of work and he's not getting the results he wants when it comes to getting his title shot again against Stipe. So I can definitely sympathize with this. Back in May when he fought Rosenstrike, it's like we were all like, man, it's exciting to see Francis back in there. And then it's like, all right, when's the next time we're going to see this? Because he's not that type of guy that's just going to step in there and fight against anyone, especially in this heavyweight division where we all know he deserves to be in that title shot. So him taking a fight against the number 4 guy, the number 3 guy, the number 7 guy, like that doesn't make any sense. And nobody wants to see it because we know that outcome. It's Stipe or bust. And that means he's going to be on the shelf for as long as it takes for that to come together. So definitely understand his frustration.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if I was making as much money as I made, as Francis made for the amount of work he was doing, yeah, I'd want to be in there ASAP, like you said. But there's also risk reward, right? He's got a guaranteed title shot. Nobody can leapfrog him at this point. I mean, why would you risk that? And even then, if you look at the heavyweight rankings, let's see, it goes, Stipe, Francis, Curtis, who he's already knocked out twice, Rosenstruck, who he knocked out, Lewis, which I wouldn't actually mind seeing a rematch of just because I think they might be, actually fight this time. But I still think that goes pretty much, Lewis won that fight. I forgot about that. No, I think Ngannou definitely knocks Lewis out in that one. Overeem, who he's already destroyed. Dos Santos, who he's already destroyed. You could do Volkov, I guess. But I mean, then you're getting into number 7, 8, 9. He's already knocked out pretty much everyone in the top 10. And if he hasn't knocked him out, he would be extremely heavily favored to knock them out. Who can you put him up against? Lewis is maybe the only one. That might be the only person that you could do a rematch of. But even then, I think that's, if he knocks out Lewis, he's literally, who does he defend the belt against? And if he wins it from Stipe, right? It's one of those things where he's so dominant when he's been on that it's got to be frustrating for him. But if I'm the UFC, I'm also not just doling him out over and over, especially after what happened last time, right? Not a lot of people remember the UFC threw their entire marketing machine behind him. From stuff that wasn't even reported behind the scenes that I heard about in terms of just everything they could for this dude. They really expected him to win. And apparently he didn't put in the work, according to some of his coaches. Dana was pissed about it as well. So there's always been rumors about he didn't have the work ethic at the time, all of that. He just thought he could throw that big punch. And then it turned into a match where I know a lot of casual fans or semi-casual fans, friends of mine, were asking about, like, who's Ngannou? What's going on here? Could have been a big moment for him. And then it turned into a wrestling match where Stipe made grabbed the belt from Dana and had his coach put it on him instead. Like, that was a big egg on the face of Dana and the promotion. That's what it was. And so, it's one of those things where I get his frustration here. He deserves to fight sooner, but he's got nowhere to go except a rematch with Stipe. And Stipe is apparently hurt, right? At least that's what is being reported. He's apparently out till March, or at least it's implied. I guess we don't know explicitly if he's hurt or not. I don't know. I just don't see any resolution for him here. Do you?
No, I don't. I mean, the only thing that could possibly be interesting in the near future is if guys that are fighting soon have like really, really impressive outings, like Walt Harris, who is fighting Volkov here this weekend. If that turns out to be a spectacular knockout, then people can get excited about Walt Harris again. And the same goes for Volkov. If he goes up there and starches Walt Harris, which I don't see happening, but if it happens, like, that's another heavyweight contender that could possibly be a matchup for him. Like you're saying, if Stipe is out until March, I hope it's not an injury. But I also don't hope it's one of those things where it's like, oh, Stipe just wants to be at home until March, like, because it's holding up the division if that's the case. And I get you want to be home, you want to be with your family and everything. You're a father, you're a firefighter, you do a lot of good stuff in your community. I get all that. Same time, the division has to move on at some point, right? And I don't want this to be a thing where it's like, okay, we're going to put Francis and I don't know, Derek Lewis too as an interim title fight. I don't want to see another interim belt. So hopefully we don't get that, at least.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's I guess it's reasonable in the sense for something that's not talked about often. But if you look at the way the UFC books their champions, right? It is very rare for a champion to fight more than twice a year. Extremely rare. And part of that is because of those payouts, whether it's pay-per-view points or just the higher payout. Because, if you haven't followed all of the work on Fighter Pay, they really want to keep it down to a certain percentage. And in order to do that, they have to space people out in such a way that an event still ends up, having fighters being paid around 20% of the overall event revenue. That's what they really aim for. That's their whole process. So it's one of those things where if basically the UFC comes to Stipe and says, hey, you just fought in August and we want you to fight by the end of the year, right? 4 months. Cool. But then we're not going to give you, if we do that, we're not going to give you another fight until next September or, next July. It's one of those things where depending on, what works best for Stipe, maybe again, it is he wants to be home for the holidays, eat whatever he can, and then get back to it. Or maybe it's just he likes having his fights spaced out in such a way that he's not too inactive for too long. That's something that's not talked about. It's something that until the UFC, changes their policy, you're not going to see a champion fight more than twice a year. I can't think of the last time a champion defended their belt more than twice a year, except maybe Valentina. But even then, I'm not sure. Or Nunes. But even then, I'm not 100% sure on that. Definitely not more than 3 times. So it's, that's just something to take into account. But that all being said, I'm with you. I don't want an interim title. If this is, hey, UFC wanted to make this happen, they were willing to say, we'll have you fight next year whenever you want, blah, blah, blah. And he turned that down. And now it's become more of I'm just doing my own thing and holding up the division. That's an issue. Because, I don't want to see Lewis versus Ngannou for an interim title fight. Would I watch it? Of course I would. But at the same time, it doesn't do much for the division and it doesn't do much for the sport as a whole because you still know that Stipe is waiting there in the wings, and it's not a situation like, say, Gaethje Ferguson, right? Where I'm more excited about that being an interim title match. Do I think it should have happened? Yeah, but then again, the UFC tried to book Gaethje versus Ferguson 6 times, and they all just fell apart. So, yeah.
Well, then, If that interim title fight does not interest you enough, I offer you this. Francis Ngannou, Jon Jones, interim heavyweight title. That can set up the narrative to set up the Stipe fight. Newly crowned interim champion versus Stipe Miocic for the undisputed heavyweight title of the world. That is a UFC move if I've ever seen one, right there. And I could totally see that happening. And it actually just makes a ton of sense, because obviously Jon Jones has been teasing this move to heavyweight. Why not do it against the biggest name outside of the champion right now? And you get this prize of an interim title. So, hey, if Jon Jones wins, you get to put a belt around Jon Jones' waist again immediately. And I know a lot of people were saying that Jon should immediately fight Stipe when he comes to heavyweight. Well, if Stipe is not hanging around, or if Stipe is not going to be around till March, then there's something you can do in the meantime. There's something you can set up for January, into January, go ahead and set that thing up. Let's get this whole thing rolling again, get people interested. I mean, you want to talk about pay-per-view buy rates. I think Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou would do some crazy numbers. It wouldn't do Conor Khabib numbers, but it would do pretty good numbers, I would think, because as we know, you relate it to the heavyweight boxing world, it makes me just golden era heavyweight boxing. That's what that type of fight reminds me of right there. It's just got all the hype in the world surrounding it. Is Jon Jones going to get touched one time and fall out? Or is he going to go and prove he can still school people at heavyweight and school a guy like Francis Ngannou? Like, that's just an intriguing matchup for me. How do you feel about that one?
Oh, I love that one. And before we get to how I feel about it, make sure you like and subscribe to the video. And I want you to comment below how you feel about it, because that does sound incredible. And you're right, it fits that time frame. They can give Francis a belt, which gives him more money. Can still set up the title fight with Stipe, or as you mentioned, maybe Jones comes up, takes that, gets an interim belt, and then you set up a championship super fight. Would be very UFC-esque to make that move. I could also see the UFC waiting so that if Francis is able to beat Stipe, then they just go straight for it. But I like your idea a lot better, and I feel like the UFC should take it and run with it. I feel like Francis should angle for it. Only holdups there are Jones apparently getting into monetary disputes with the UFC, saying he's kind of walking away or he's moving up. But, that whole debacle on Twitter where at first he was like, I'm out, and then he was like, oh, I'm fine. And then he also, don't forget, saw that Jan Blachowicz won the belt and suddenly was like, hey, you mind if I go get my belt real quick? Because he might have been a little bit more worried regarding Dominic Reyes, and he feels a little bit more confident against Jan. Just saying. I don't know. Might have pissed off some Jon Jones fans saying that, but it might be true. But yeah, I love that idea. I think that's the move. I think that is the only move you can make outside of having Francis wait, is you book Jones versus Ngannou, interim title. You don't even have to make it an interim title if you don't want to, but I feel like it would be a wasted opportunity not to. I'm with you in that regard. And I say, yeah, line it up. I mean, heck, throw it on the, you talk about pay-per-view numbers. Jones moves the needle. He always has. Not as much as McGregor. I think even DC versus Jones 2 did 800,000 buys, something like that. But that all being said, throw that on the McGregor-Poirier card, and then you've got some real. Then I think you're 1.5 million and above, because then you got all the Jon Jones fans, all the McGregor fans. I think that could do big numbers.
Oh yeah, that would easily clear. That would easily clear 1 million. Top end maybe 1.6. I would think something like that. Maybe it'd be a hell of a card if you put those two fights on the same card. And then you would run into the whole negotiation thing that who gets top billing. And of course, Conor would want it. But hey, Conor, you're not fighting for a title unless they bring in the 165-pound division. And Dustin versus Connor for the inaugural 165-pound division. Telling you, man, there's a lot of things that they can do to make things interesting. It's just how crazy do they want to get?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, do that, or have Khamzat Chimaev be put in there as have him fight twice in one night on that same card. Have him be a backup fighter to Connor versus Poirier, but then also have somebody else to fight at 185. And if that person falls out, let's say last minute weight cut, he fights the 185 guy, and then he goes and fights Connor Poirier. It makes sense to me. If you want to get crazy with it, if you want to get real crazy, bring in Brock Lesnar. Have him fight. Have him fight Stipe for the belt on the same card as Jones versus Ngannou for the interim belt. Now, that's real craziness.
Listen, I like your idea of Khamzat, because Khamzat is the solution to all problems UFC right now. So just Khamzat everything. Khamzat. Right. Just fill him in wherever. Weight classes, what are those? It's Khamzat Chimaev. Okay, he's going to fight you, and then he's going to fight someone else 30 minutes after you guys fight. He wants 3 fights in one night, so maybe we actually get to see that happen. The Khamzat Chimaev Invitational, UFC, whatever number that ends up being.
That'd be great. Just weigh in at the lowest weight class, and then just go in 170, go 185, and then just bump up, fight Brock Lesnar. There you go. That pay-per-view will do ridiculous amounts of money.
That's the real BMF title right there.
Oh,
that's the real one.
That'll get you a Cam Soda sponsorship. That's for sure. That much I know. So
no doubt. And you know how we see, shout out to Teofimo Lopez, who just beat Lomachenko. He gets to pose with 4 belts, right? So have just Khamzat take on the champion in every division in one night, and he gets to pose with 3 belts or 4 belts, however many fights you want to give him in one night. Boom, there it is. Perfect. Yeah. Now we have boxing and MMA crossing paths again in ways we never thought possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've really gone off the rails here. So just to wrap this up, if this isn't going to get cut, who knows? Anything else to say regarding Francis Ngannou and his frustration?
No, to reel it back in, man, I want to see Francis 100% back in action as soon as possible. It sucks that he has to, again, just be on the sideline and not getting fights, not getting paid. So hopefully all of this gets sorted out very soon. Hopefully we get to see him back in the octagon by January, at least for me.
Yeah. Yep, I'm with you. Francis in January. Let's do it.